may be the biggest tube in the world. Of heat and flame is an open hearth furnace. Where in the world is it?
That must be Pittsburgh.
A 100-passenger helicopter landing on a futuristic building. Where in the world is it?
Boy, maybe it's on Mars.
A quaint windmill originally built 3 centuries ago.
Probably out on Cape Cod.
The ancient art of glass blowing is still practiced in the village of...
Oh, some little town in New York State.
Historic figures mark the quarter hour on Cheapside Street.
I'll bet it's in England.
Dearborn, Michigan, once known as Hardscrabble, began as a pioneer settlement on the banks of the historic River Rouge. Today, Dearborn is a great industrial and residential community, rubbing elbows with its next-door neighbor, the city of Detroit. Here in the southeastern corner of Michigan is the automotive manufacturing center of the world. At first glance, Dearborn might be any typical American community, with its busy streets and modern stores. Its quiet hotel, the Dearborn Inn, is set apart from the bustle of the city. But there is something different about Dearborn, something which makes it one of the most interesting holiday cities in America. Tourist attraction for over 2.5 million visitors every year. Something which brings families from Virginia and Quebec, Florida, Nebraska, and Rhode Island from all over the world. This family from the historic Old Dominion has come to Greenfield Village in Dearborn to visit the America their grandfathers knew. This railroad man from Pennsylvania has driven hundreds of westward miles to walk with his family through a bygone world in Greenfield Village and the Henry Ford Museum. This woman from the far west has retraced the trail of the pioneers and has come to stay at the Dearborn Inn while she explores the holiday attractions of this Middle Western tourist mecca. And these people have seen the blinding blasts of atomic explosions. They wonder what the future will bring. Could this be the world of tomorrow? Tourist gateway to these holiday attractions in Dearborn is the Ford Rotunda, the showplace of the auto industry. Here, millions of visitors begin their exciting holiday tour through Dearborn's industrial and historical wonderland. The Rotunda is the world's largest hospitality center, open to the public daily, all the year round. Waiting for them inside the front doors of the Rotunda hangs a modern mobile, symbol of man's continuous quest for new and better ways to use the natural resources of the earth. And below are gathered displays of today's automotive magic and a preview of the world of tomorrow. All these miracles of modern science and production contribute to the manufacture of today's motive power. Power that moves us swiftly along the highways, and power that provides mechanical muscles for the American farm. These two boys may dream of someday driving this sleek, modern convertible, but by the time they're old enough to get behind the wheel, they may be piloting a car like this, the XL 500, the shape of things to come. These displays point the way to the future, but the Rotunda also plays an important role in the life of the Dearborn community today, for there are some things that never change. And in special exhibits and shows, the Rotunda reflects the holiday mood of each passing season. Every year at Christmas, for instance, the Rotunda is transformed into a fairyland of color and excitement. And part of the package are some mythical forms of transportation, so familiar to us all. There's always something to see and do at the Rotunda, but it's only the beginning of a Dearborn holiday. Among other things, it's the gateway to the fantastic Rouge plant, the industrial mecca of the world. A trip through the Rouge leads the visitor through 1,200 acres of steel mills and glass furnaces, coke ovens and foundries, manufacturing plants and assembly lines, one of the modern wonders of the industrial world. Thousands of tons of iron ore arrive at the Rouge in huge ships that have sailed the Great Lakes from the Mesabi Range in Minnesota. This red ore is the lifeblood of the Rouge plant. It's brought in at the rate of 1,600,000 tons per year. Some of this ore is used in making steel, one of the most dramatic spectacles to be seen on any Dearborn holiday. They've just tapped an open hearth furnace. The molten steel is pouring into a 200-ton ladle. Soon it will be cast into ingots. Ever see a white-hot ingot of steel? Here's one that weighs 10 tons. They handle it like a block of ice. This steel ingot is crushed, widened, lengthened, rolled back and forth many times against the brutal pressure of heavy rollers like these. Now they cool it and clean it and roll it up tight. This long sheet of steel will be stamped into panels, doors, hoods, and many other parts of the car body. Automobile frames come out of the drying ovens to start their journey down the final assembly line. Here, the dreams of designers, the painstaking details of engineering, and the skilled craftsmanship of thousands of men and women take shape as all the parts and assemblies come together. This is the dramatic climax of modern mass production. But any Dearborn holiday is a day of contrasts. 3 miles from the Rouge plant, and the visitor finds himself half a century away from modern industry. Here in the Henry Ford Museum, a special exhibit provides an intimate glimpse into the life of the man who helped to put the world on wheels. Henry Ford was born, grew to greatness, and died in the city of Dearborn. The steam engines he saw as a child first gave him the idea of developing a self-propelled vehicle. He tested his first gasoline engine on the kitchen sink in his home at 58 Bagley Avenue in nearby Detroit. Its sputtering noise has echoed and re-echoed since then in millions of more complicated engines. The 15 millionth Model T, the last one to come off the assembly line. The year, 1927. Uh-oh. The Model T, the most fondly remembered automobile ever built. Henry Ford's son, Edsel, at the age of 10. Edsel began designing cars himself at an early age. A valentine sent by Henry Ford to his wife, Clara. One of the documents on display is a photocopy of an autobiographical sketch that Henry Ford wrote and drew in 1913.
It says, the first thing that I remember in my life is my father taking my brother John and myself to see a bird's nest under a large oak log, 20 rods east of our home and my birthplace. John was so young that he could not walk. Father carried him.
On the banks of the River Rouge, a few miles from that birthplace in Dearborn, Henry Ford built Fairlane. He and his wife Clara lived here for many years. This is her famous rose garden, where over 8,000 rose bushes produce millions of blooms each year. The 56-room home is now the Ford Motor Company archives. This was the living room. During his lifetime, Henry Ford saved practically every document and letter that he received. They were stored in closets, in drawers, and on shelves all over the house. As the documents are sorted and cataloged, a telegram from the President of the United States may be found next to an 1894 receipt for 45 cents. Papers in the collection are being filed by subject in air-conditioned rooms. Fairlane is open only to research scholars and organized groups, but many of its treasures, like these old watches, are on public display in the Henry Ford Museum. In giving this museum to the public, Henry Ford said, "When we are through, we shall have reproduced American life as lived. And that, I think, is the best way of preserving at least a part of our history and tradition." And here in the museum is American life as it was lived. The cars we used to drive, the clothes we used to wear, the complete pattern of yesterday's way of life. An old coreless steam engine with its huge flywheel, nearly a century old and still in good running condition, like all of the historic engines on display. Big engines and little engines, for there is an unusual collection of miniature steam engines too, each perfect down to the last detail. The stores America used to shop in have been recreated in the museum. 22 early American stores and craft shops. This corner drugstore of 75 years ago really bore down on the sale of drugs. You couldn't get a malted milk or an electric hair dryer, but you could get a pretty good foot remedy, or any number of herbs, powders, and pills, including Nux vomica, a painkiller, and even a leech for Johnny's black eye. A gunmaker's shop of 150 years ago. America's inventive genius was first applied to the design and manufacture of guns. But as the frontier gunfire died away, Americans turned their interests in other directions. Here are the fashions and toys, and even the music of yesteryear. An old steam calliope, relic of the great American circus and tent show. It spoke a language of its own to generations of Americans who waited impatiently each year for the circus to come to town. And this is the bicycle built not for 2, but 10. American life as it was lived in years gone by can also be seen in Greenfield Village, next door to the museum. Strolling around the village green, holiday visitors see a quiet American village, looking just as if time had stood still a century ago. Among the many authentic structures which have been brought to Greenfield Village is this Cape Cod windmill, built by the Pilgrims. And this old covered bridge, originally built in Pennsylvania in 1832. Visitors who prefer to ride through the village may take the tour in an old Model T, or if they like, enjoy a leisurely carriage ride. This charming old cottage was moved to the village from the Cotswold district in England. Early American arts and crafts are faithfully reproduced in the village In this old carding mill, for instance, where a weaver demonstrates the working of the loom. And in the sandwich glass plant, where visitors can watch the glass blower at work. In the pottery shop, the traditional potter's wheel is still in use. In the 1880 tintype studio, holiday visitors can smile as they see themselves in the stiff, formal poses of their Victorian grandfathers. On Cheapside Street, below the village green, is the Sir John Bennett jewelry shop from London, England. The two giants, Gog and Magog, strike each quarter hour as they have for over a century. At the end of this street is the Wright bicycle shop, the actual building in which the Wright brothers built the motor and parts of their first airplane. The building was moved to Greenfield Village from Dayton, Ohio. This little brick shed once stood behind the house at 58 Bagley Avenue in Detroit. In 1896, Henry Ford built his first car in this building. He called it a quadricycle. And here it is, still running perfectly on all two cylinders. How far we've come in a little less than 60 years. Perhaps nowhere in America is there a sharper contrast between the old and the new than on a Dearborn holiday. The Menlo Park Laboratory of Thomas Edison, workshop of America's greatest inventor. On the second floor of the crowded laboratory is a working model of Edison's first talking machine. The recording was made on tinfoil wrapped around a cylinder.
In this room, Thomas Alva Edison invented the first talking machine.
This is how it sounded.
In this room, Thomas Alva Edison invented the first talking machine.
In this room, on October the 21st, 1879, Edison first produced the miracle of electric light. And this is the little lamp in which Edison tested a carbonized thread after failing with thousands of other materials. The lamp that lighted the world. It is all here for young and old alike in Dearborn, Holiday City in the heartland of our American continent. All its holiday wonders are open all the year round, waiting to welcome you. Here are the cherished treasures of our past, the wonders of our modern civilization, and the enchantment, the mystery, and the hope of our future.